Okay, this is going to be a quick intro on how to use open and use Excel. I'll go over some basic features that you can use. It'll help a little bit and show you how to set up a distance time graph. So the first thing when you load Excel, if you can't see the menus, there's a little pin here. So if you actually click that pin, then your menus will always stay at the top. They won't just disappear on you. So at the top we have home, which is your general formatting. Insert, where we can find charts. Draw is literally for drawing lines and stuff. General page layout, this is more for printing, but you can also do height and width of columns. Formulas, because Excel, you can actually put in formulas and have it calculate stuff for you. Data, this is where we can sort your data, convert it. We can move columns. So if you enter things in rows, you want in columns, you want to flip it, we can do that here. And you can filter your data, and then review and view. So view tells you actually what you're going to look at and your zoom. So we're going to go back to file, and I'm just going to start inputting some data. So right now, because we're talking about distance time graphs, I'm going to put in some information on distance and time. So you just have to start typing distance, meters, and time in seconds. So notice this column got cut off. So a nice little trick about Excel, if you put your mouse over top of sort of where the columns are and you get this resize, if you double click on that, it will resize it to the maximum width of whatever's in that column. So you don't have to try to drag it. If just put your mouse over it, double click, and it will resize your column width for you. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of fast forward here and enter my data for distance and time. Okay, so I entered my distance data here. Now I want to show you another feature about Excel. Let's say we want to do a consecutive order. So like, for example, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one neat feature of this, if you actually start putting it in and highlight those cells, you get this kind of menu in the right-hand corner. And if you actually just double click on that, it will actually fill following the pattern of those first few cells to the where you had ended the highlight. So that's another feature to help save time. So we have our distance here, we have our time here. Now I know generally we want to put in the A column our X value, okay, the independent variable, and in the B column we want to put our dependent variable. Now I intentionally put it backwards because I want to show you how to sort of manipulate your data. Now there's two ways you can do that. You can actually just grab a column and cut it and paste it and drag it and move it, or you can leave it the way it is right now, and then when you actually set your graph up, you can manipulate it that way. So we're going to go with actually leaving it like this instead of cutting and pasting, and we're just going to manipulate our graph because it's more important to learn that feature, so that way if you happen to set up a lot of data in the wrong way, it's a lot easier to just set your graph up. So what we're going to do is you can actually highlight your data, and then you're going to go to Insert, because that's where, again, we find our graphs, and we're going to go for Charts. Now, if you click on Recommended Charts, you're going to get a whole bunch of options like this, but you can see all the charts here, and you can even see them just in the file there. So because we're doing distance time, we want to have an XY scatter. So there we go, distance and time. Okay, and here we go. So we have, now in this case here, we don't have a lot of options. We seem to have time up here. Now, the nice thing I like about charts is you can add elements. For example, you can add axis titles, okay, and they will pop up, or you can click on the quick layout. So I really like the quick layout function because it gives you a bunch of different setups. So for example, this one here has axis labels and a legend. It doesn't have a title. So I'm going to click on this one here because it has both axis labels, it has a title, and it has a legend. Now, because we're only doing one line here, we don't really need the legend, so we can actually delete that by just clicking on it and hitting delete, and everything resizes. Now, we can fill in a title. So, for example, figure 1, because we have to label it, and then this will be distance. I don't know what this was. Distance of Miss Krausse's robot during trial number 1. Okay, so there we go. So that's going to be my figure title. Now, I don't like the way that it's centered, so again, remember formatting features are in that, and I like to indent my titles. So, oops, I'm going to indent it so it shows up. Now, charts need to be at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and drag it down to the bottom of my graph down here. Now I want to resize my graph. So one thing you can do for resizing your graph, if you click on the whole kind of outside chart area, you can kind of drag the chart area and it's going to kind of resize everything. The other thing you can do is by grabbing the picture, but that's just going to kind of scale everything accordingly. Again, we can put in our axis titles. Now, remember, my data is backwards. Over here, I have my distance, and up the side, I have my time. So what we're going to do, we're going to click on our chart data, right-click on it, and where it says Select Data, you're going to find that button. And you should get this window appearing right here, and it says Select Data Source. So what we want to do is we want to actually edit our data source. Okay. I'm just going to move this. So this is what comes up. Now the series name, if we had a name, right, that we wanted to actually appear, so if we had multiple lines, maybe this said trial 1. So for example, I'm going to write here trial, oops. I'm going to select this cell here. I know there's nothing there, but I'm just going to select that. As whatever is that cell. So right now nothing's showing up for it. I'm going to select my X values. So again, I'm going to pick that. Now, right now it's saying these are the X, but I really want time to be the X, so I'm going to select that. And I'm going to select my Y values, and I'm going to select that. Oops, I selected the wrong box. So one too many. So I just want the data. There we go. All right, so now it's actually swapped that data. It's okay. We can say okay, and that's there. Remember, I picked this trial number 1. Did I pick that box or did I pick this box? So if I want this to show up in the series name again, again, just right click on it, select data, edit, so series name, and what we're going to do is select, I picked the wrong box, select that box there. All right, so series name should appear now, if we had it appearing. All right, so axis title, again, just right click, and you can type in it. So this is going to be distance, and we have meters, and this one here is time by seconds. And there's your titles. And again, if you want to resize this, all you have to do, click on the title, go back to home, and you can increase the size of your font, you can decrease the size of your font, change your font, move it around. So there's our data. Now I'm going to show you a couple other features that have to do with general formatting of this graph. So like I said, some other features. Now this graph does look good, it's fine, but we can add to it. So for example, if we wanted to add a trend line, you can click on the series and then right click on it, and you're going to feature called Add Trend Line. So when that comes up, you're going to get this window. You can make sure linear is selected because for distance time we're doing linear. And then you can set the intercept or you can display the equation. So a lot of times we want to have the equation displayed on the chart. And when you do that, you can get rid of that and you'll see your equation. Now, if this is kind of crossing your line, what you can do is just move it around. Okay, so there's adding trend lines. The next thing I want to talk about is just kind of cleaning up the graph to make it look good. So we have our title down here. We have our axis labels. Again, you can resize them. Now, one thing I like to do is make sure the scale is good. So if you right click on, for example, the x-axis, what we can do, this window's not showing up, but if you right click on it, you should get a window called Format Axis. So when Format Axis comes up, now you can actually tell it if you want, for example, where you want the minimum and the maximum. So I know my values don't go beyond 10, so I just want my maximum at 10. The other thing that's important is major and minor units. So right now, major units are every 2. Now, I'd rather have it as every 1. Okay? So, and minor units could be halves. Okay, now that that's there, you can scroll down to go to tick marks. Tick marks are the actual little lines across. So for major type, right now there's none, but for example, if you want to cross them, you see you get the little cross marks. Minors, again, you could do cross for minors. So now every half a second, you have that interval there. Labels would be just to actually see the data if you wanted it. And the other thing that I'm going to show you is actually how to do grid lines. So if you actually click on, for example, the axis, oops, actually click on it, right click on it. What we want to do is add major grid lines. Okay, so if we add major grid lines, we're going to get that. You can do the same thing again if you right click on one of the minor grid lines on the axis and add minor grid lines. So then you can get a little bit easier to read your graph. And you can do the same thing for formatting the axis and the scale by just right clicking on the y-axis and again, format axis. Again, minimum, maximum, so I believe our maximum was 16, so that should cover it. Minor units, again, I want my major units to be every 1 and maybe my minor units to be halves. So there we go. So now I can see a little bit easier. I can read the graph maybe a little bit easier. And make sure everything is the way you want it. And then you can print. Now the cool thing about using Excel, for example, let's say you realized, oh, I entered this data point wrong. I'm going to get rid of this. Let's say I entered this wrong. It should have actually been 8.9. So if I actually change this to 8.9 and hit enter, see that? The graph actually updates automatically. Okay, so it's not like you have to redraw the graph or change anything. You just have to look at your data. So I'll show you that again with maybe a bigger shift. So for example, let's say it was entered as 15. It's way up here, and we need to change that back to 11.9. The graph will automatically update. Okay, and you can do that for labels and everything. The other thing is you can add more lines onto the graph. So the way that you can do that, again, let's say we're just going to add, maybe this is going to be trial number 2 over here. We'll move our graph over and have another trial. So we're going to use the same x values, but now distance on the second trial. Distance on trial number 2. Let's say these are 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We're just going to make it really simple. 16, 18, 20. Okay. What we can do is we can actually click on the chart and go to select data again. And we have trial 1 selected, but what we're going to do is we're going to add a second trial. And again, the series name, we can call it distance 2. And hit enter. The x values that we're going to use, we're going to select the original x values, and then the y values for our second trial we're going to select these. So if we click on OK, you can actually see the second line showing up. And again, you can do a trend line, but again, this time we're going to have to add a legend. So an easy way to add that legend, if you did delete it in the first place, if you just, so for example, this is the Excel file. If you click on your chart, you get this add feature here. And that is another way you can add elements. So if you just left click on that, you'll get things like axis, axis titles, chart titles, data labels, error bars, grid lines, and there is your legend. So if you actually click on legend, the legend shows up here. Now, again, like the other thing, you can move your legend around. Okay, so it's showing you the trend line for that. It's showing you trial 1 and it's showing you distance for number 2. And if you want to change that label, remember whatever you had designated that. So for example, I want to call it trial number 2. It should update. So there we go. Trial 1, trial 2. If you add another trend line to that, it should show up in the legend as well. Okay, so those are some basic features along with a couple extra advantages. There's lots of great YouTube videos online on how to use Excel. Just make sure it is the 2016 version, otherwise a lot of the features and the windows have changed. So another good thing you can do if you want to print your graph, you can print the whole thing with your data table, but if you just click on it and go to File, Print, one thing you have to make sure, if you're just got the table select, or sorry, if you just have your graph selected, it is going to just print your graph. However, if you do go back and actually just highlight, for example, Excel, like this, and then go to print, you're going to see a lot, anything that you had highlighted. So just when you preview it, make sure that you can switch the your view to landscape, and we see we've still got 2 pages here. Another great feature of this is called scaling. Always make sure it shrinks to fit to 1 page. So now we definitely know we're only going to print 1 page on the printer. We're going to save paper, and everything's going to be there. Okay, and you can get multiple graphs on here. But if you do want that graph to just appear big, full screen, just click on, instead of highlighting behind it, just click on the graph when you go to hit print. Okay, if you have any other issues, make sure you see me. Otherwise, again, YouTube will let you see a lot more of the features like formulas and converting data and filtering data.